If my phone doesn't keep doing the charging thing like 5 billion times. Jesus Christ. All right. The Algerian people, medical techniques, and the war of liberation. First one. Hey, Rachel. We have had occasion many times to point out the appearance of radically new type of behavior in various aspects of the private and public life of the Algerian. The shock that broke the chain of colonialism has moderated, exclusive attitudes, reduced extreme positions, and made certain arbitrary views obsolete. Medical science and concern for one's health have always been purposed or imposed by the occupying power. In the colonial situation, however, it is impossible to create the physical and psychological conditions for the learning of hygiene or for the assimilation of concepts concerning pandemic diseases. In the colonial situation, going to see the doctor, the administrator, the constable, or the mayor are identical moves. In the sense of alienation from colonial society and the mistrust of the representatives of its authority are always accompanied by an almost mechanical sense of detachment and mistrust, or even the things that are most positive and most profitable to the population. We have noticed that in the very first month of the struggle, the French authorities decided to put an embargo on what's this word? Antibiotics, ether, alcohol, anti-tetanus vaccines. The Algerian who wished to obtain any of these medications was required to give the pharmacist detailed information as to his identity and that of the patient. Just when the Algerian people decide no longer to wait for others to treat them, colonialism prohibited the sale of medications and surgical instruments. Just when the Algerian was set to live and take care of himself, the occupying power doomed him to a horrifying agony. So there you go. Like they're forcing the, yeah. I also want to also mention that it did talk about how the doctors don't only do doctoring, but they also are tied to the land, and they own property and land to actually combine with their doctors. So they're settlers. That's how it defined them as settlers too, because they have ties to the land and they own property in Algeria. Yeah, okay. Numerous families had to stand by powerless, their hearts full of rancor, and watch the atrocious death of tetanus of wounded mujahideen who had taken refuge in their houses. From the earliest months of the revolution, the directives of the National Front were clearly given. Any wound, no matter how benign, automatically requires an anti-tetanus vaccine injection. This the people knew. And when the wound ugly to look at had been cleaned of the dirt and grit picked up in the course of the retreat, the comrades of the wounded man would suddenly be seized with the fear of the tetanus infection. But the pharmacists were adamant the sale of anti-tetanus vaccines was prohibited. Dozens and dozens of Algerians today can describe the slow, frightful death of a wounded man, progressively paralyzed then twisted, and again paralyzed by the tetanus toxin. No one remains in the room to the end. They say in conclusion. So basically, because they're not giving the antibiotics and all these things, they are they're watching their people die. You know what I mean? Yet the Algerian, when he sometimes would get a European to make his purchases, would see him return with the medicine which he had obtained without difficulty. The same Algerian had previously begged all the pharmacists in the vicinity and had finally given up, having felt the last pharmacist hard and inquisitorial eye on him. The European would return, loaded down with medicine, relaxed, innocent. Such experiences have not made it easy for the Algerian to keep a balanced judgment towards members of the European minority. Science, depoliticalized science is in the service of man, is often non-existent in the colonies. For this Algerian, who for hours was begged unsuccessfully for 100 grams of sterling cotton, the colonialist world constitutes a monolithic block. Alcohol being similarly prohibited, the wounds would be dressed like would be dressed with lukewarm water, and for the lack of ether, amputations would be carried out without anesthetics. Oh God, sounds like Civil War scenario. Jesus Christ! Now all these things that could not be found, and these are all preventable too. Now all these things that could be found, that were held by the adversary, withdraw from the circulation were to take on a new value. These medications, which were taken for granted before the struggle for liberation, were transformed into weapons, and the urban revolutionary cells having the responsibility for supplying medications were as important as those assigned to obtain information as to the plans and movements of the adversary. So like, even with us, when it comes time, we're gonna have to do the same fucking thing at some point. We're gonna have to go out and like try to create either trade routes or something like that, or we're just gonna have to yeah. Even as the Algerian tradesman discovers ways to supply the people with radios, so the Algerian pharmacist, the Algerian nurse, and the Algerian doctor multiplied their efforts to making antibiotics and dressings available to the wounded at all times. That's the Viet Cong did so. Yeah, from Tunisia and Morocco, finally during the crucial months of 1956 and 1957, has to come to a steady flow of medical supplies that saved an incalculable number of human lives. The development of the war in Algeria, the setting up of units of National Army of Liberation throughout the territory, brought about the dramatic public health problem. The increase in the number of areas constituting a threat to the adversary led him to interrupt regular activities such as the visit of the doctor to the dowers. Oh, stop doing that. From one day to the next, the population was left to shift for itself, and the National Liberation Front had to take drastic measures. It found itself faced with the necessity of setting up a system of public health capable of replacing the periodic visits of the colonial doctors. See, now they're starting to develop infrastructures, dual power. That's dual power. That is. Would that be considered dual power, you think? I think so. What do you think? Yep. This is how the local cell members responsible for health became an important member of the revolutionary apparatus. Stop doing things for me. Never asked you to do this. The problem, moreover, became more and more complex. Bombardments and raids on civilians were now added to the natural disease. It is a known fact that for one Algerian soldier hit, there are 10 civilians killed or wounded. There is no lack of testimony from the French soldiers to this effect. Under such circumstances, medical supplies and technicians became indispensable. It was during this period that orders were given to medical students, nurses, and doctors to join the combatants. Meeting were organized among political leaders and health technicians. After a short time, people's delegates assigned to handle public health problems came and joined each cell. Nice. All questions were dealt with in a remarkable spirit of revolutionary solidarity. There was no paternalism. There was no timidity. On the contrary, a concerted effort was made to achieve the health plan that has been worked out. The health technician did not launch a psychological approach program for the purpose of winning over the underdeveloped population. The problem was under the direction of the national authority to advise the people's health, to protect the lives of our women, of our children, and of our combatants. We must dwell on the new reality that the rise of a national power has constituted in Algeria since 1954. This national authority has taken upon itself the responsibility for the health of the people, and the people have abandoned their old passivity. The people involved in this fight against death have shown exceptional conscientiousness and enthusiasm for their observance and of the directives. The Algerian doctor and the native doctor who, as we have seen, was looked upon before the national combat as an ambassador of the occupier, was reintegrated into the group, sleeping on the ground with the men and women of the matas, I can't say that, living the drama of the people. The Algerian doctor became a part of the Algerian body. There was no longer that renaissance, so consent during the period of unchallenged oppression. He was no longer, quote, the doctor, but our doctor, our technician. The people henceforth demanded and practiced a technique stripped of its own foreign characteristics. The War of Liberation introduced medical techniques and the native technician into the life of innumerable regions of Algeria. Population accustomed to the monthly and benign, right?
Benign. I wish I had a copy of the book or my computer. How is it spelled real quick?
It's biennial.
Biennial, sorry. Biennal. Biennial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Visits. It's like the time period, how many times a week or month or year they come, right?
Yes.
Visits of European doctors saw Algerian doctors settling permanently in their villages. The revolution and medicine manifested their presence simultaneously. It is understandable that such facts should provide the basis for an uncomparable dynamism and the point of departure for new attitudes. The problems of hygiene and of prevention of disease were approached in a remarkable creative atmosphere. The latrines recommended by the colonial administration had not been accepted in the MECHTAS, but they were now installed in great numbers. Ideas of the transmission of intestinal parasites were immediately assimilated by the people. The elimination of stagnant pools was undertaken, and the fight against non-natal, oh my gosh, ophthalmia.
It's as close as I'm gonna get.
Let me look it up.
Spectacular results. What is that word? We're having our designated definition person looking it up. Thank you. There's the name. Thank you. What you got for us, Finn?
Oh, ophthalmia. One moment, sorry.
No worries. Probably can copy that word from the thing. Ugh.
Oh, it's an inflammation in the eye. Ugh,
Okay,
painful.
thank you. Yeah, that sounds painful. The problem was no longer that mothers neglected their children, but that, oh my gosh, Aromycin was at the time unavailable. The people wanted to get well, wanted to care for themselves, and were anxious to understand the explanation. Preferred preferred by fellow doctors or nurses. Yeah. Schools of nurses were opened, and the illiterate in a few days proved capable of making intravenous injections. Look at that. As soon as you give the people and you get rid of the whole fucking, like, you know, what is it called? You get rid of the fucking gatekeeping shit, and the people know that these are the things that are needed, and they'll come to the task. Similarly, old superstitions began to... What?
You missed number 8.
Miss number 8? Okay.
Yeah.
A change in attitude on the part of the Algerian towards the occupiers, hospital centers, was likewise to be noted. It would in fact happen that the need for a particular medication or a surgical operation impossible to carry out in the Maquis would cause the doctor to advise the civilians to let himself be transferred to a hospital directed by the French. The hesitation and refusal that had been met with before the revolution vanished, and the population would follow the orders given by the Algerian doctor in the Maquis. This new attitude was very marked in 1956 to 57, and had occasion during this period to visit a great number of hospitals. The European doctors expressed their surprise to me at the time. Since the war, they said, quote, the Muslims let themselves be treated in a hospital in the proportion of 5 to 1 as compared to the preceding years. One wonders why this is so. It should also be added that the hospital administration in the Maquis had a strategic interest in having civilians cared for by the French and keeping medical supplies for the soldiers who could not be evacuated. All right, let's go back up. We're not at 9. Similarly, old superstitions began to crumble. Witchcraft, maraboutism, already considerably discredited as a result of the propaganda carried on by the intellectuals. Belief in the Dying, all these things that seemed to be part of the very being of the Algerian were swept away by the actions of practice initiated by the revolution. Number 9. The maraboutism, the practice of medicine, about the marabout, the Muslim priest, translate notes. The Dying, plural, denoun, is a spirit. He haunts the houses and fields. Popular belief attributed to him an important role in all the phenomenon of life, birth, circumcisions, marriage, sickness, death. In the case of disease, any impairment of health was interpreted as the work of a bad Dying. Okay, back to, where was 9? 8, where was 9? Okay, there you go. Even the instructions difficult for highly technological societies to accept were mere assimilated by the Algerian. We shall give 2 significant examples of this. First of all, a rule was made against giving a drink of water to a man wounded in the abdomen. Instructions were categorical. Lectures were given to people. Not a boy, not a girl, but must be, allowed to remain uniformed as to this rule. Uninformed as to this rule. Never a drop of water to the soldier wounded in the belly. After a battle, while waiting the arrival of a doctor, people gather around the wounded, would listen without weakening to the entreaties of the combatants. For hours, the woman would ostensibly refuse the wounded and request swallowing of water, the requested swallow of water. And even Mujahideen's own son did not hesitate to say to his father, "Here is your gun. Kill me if you want, but I will not give you the water you ask for." When the doctor arrived, the necessary operation would be performed, and the Mujahideen would have the maximum chance of recovering. The second example, the second example relates to the strict diet of the following in the course of the typhus infection. In the hospital, the observance of the rules of is obtained by the prohibition of the family visit. For experience has shown that whenever a member of the family is allowed to visit the patient, he lets himself be moved by the typhus patient, hunger, the magnets, to leave him some cake or some chicken. The result is that often an intestinal perforation results. Huh?
Yes.
Perforation. Yes, you're good.
Yeah. Cool. The colonial situation, these things assume a specific significance for the colonized interprets this medical injunction as a new form of torture, of famine, a new manifestation of the occupants' inhumane methods. What?
Famine.
I said famine. I almost said famine. If the typhus patient is a child, one can understand the feelings that can overcome the mother. Hold on a second, everybody. Out in the, oh my gosh, the Djebel. On the other hand, it's DJEBEL. On the other hand, the Algerian nurse or the doctor is able to win the patient's family over to a complete cooperation, hygienic precautions, regular administration of medication, prohibition of visits, isolation, and strict observance of diet for several days. The Algerian mother, who had never in her life seen a doctor, would follow the technician's instructions to the letter. Specialists in basic health education should give careful thought to the new situation that developed in the course of a struggle for national liberation on the part of an underdeveloped people. Once the body of the nation begins to live again in a coherent and dynamic way, everything becomes possible. The notion about native psychology or of the basic personality are shown to be vain. The people who take their destiny into their own hands assimilate the most modern forms of technology in an extraordinary rate. All right, that's the end of that chapter. So it looks like that the development moved to Algerian doctors and people learning from the Algerian doctors and sometimes from the French doctor these procedures in order to be able to help with the revolution and help with wounded people. So anything, yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question. Can you remind me again, who were the people who were able to give a certain kind of injection?
I can't remember.
Oh,
Don't remember.
yeah, no problem. The tetanus. Probably, yeah. Just because I don't know. I remember we were getting really irritated with someone yesterday, trying to like convince us that okay, no, not everybody can come up with their own original ideas or concepts of their own, but yet here we are in the Algerian Revolution as we read about it.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to get very use our creativity in order to, if we're looking at these other revolutions and we're actually studying them and observing them of what works for them, what could possibly work for us, the only way we're going to tell is we put the thing in motion and make it active. We have to implement and see how it works and how it engages with other people and find out what works and what needs to be changed. So that's what they're doing. They're developing these strategies based on their conditions and keeping the stuff that's working and getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work,
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, I'm mentioning the Viet Cong and Vietnam again, but I mean, those floor traps, the variety of floor traps they had, yeah, it worked very well with the conditions that we're fighting on, because most of these so-called American soldiers, they were never used to fighting within a jungle, so
Yeah.
pretty good.
And the thing is living and doing a war or a protracted people's war or anything like that, using dialectical materialism, materialist dialectics within that, and using historical materialism helps you engage with the material conditions and the dialectics that in the war, like strategic retreats, strategic offensives, mobilization, things like that. You know, like Mao, and probably like Mao, he engaged with protracted people's war and civil war, utilizing the methods and tactics of Marxist-Leninism. You know what I mean? To engage with the material conditions and the people at the same time. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Chapter 5, Algerians European minority. We already have a number 1. First published in Les Temps Modernes, June 1959. So the rest looks like, yeah. All right. Joe, did you have anything you wanted to say? I just want to include you. Guess not. I think they're having a coughing fit a bit. They've been trying to get rid of some liquid in their lungs and shit. In the preceding pages, we have on several occasions tried to shed light on the certain aspect of Algerian European society. We have drawn attention to the often odious behavior of certain Europeans. One would, of course, have liked to find among Algerian European doctors and intellectuals a desire to lessen the tension, to facilitate contacts, to play down the conflict. We know that instead, Europeans intellectuals have taken over the colonialist cause. I don't know how to say this person's name. The Serengis, the Borgandis, the Lanqueries, have disappeared or operated in the background. All right, hold on real quick. Number 2, I don't know. Figures among the French colonialists. These are figures among the French colonialists. Okay, good. Most of it be imagined. Hold on a second. Yeah. Nor must, wait, was I right there? Yeah. Sorry, everybody. Nor must it be imagined that they act through intermediaries. That period is now closed. The Laglordies and the Regards are not straw man. Hold on, let's look down here. Young activist leaders. Okay, cool. Hold on, I'm looking. They are assumed. They have assumed the leadership of the colonialist forces, made direct contacts with the army and the French parties of the right, and do not rule out of possibilities of the sudden break from France. The traditionalists of the colonization have long ago been outdistanced, accustomed to parliamentary actions, to political pressures, and to backstage maneuvering. These men in the past 3 months have shown a marked hesitation. This is because a new kingpin of the colonization see the future in apocalyptic terms. Some of the Algerian Europeans intellectuals, because they have links with the colonial power, have often contributed to giving the Algerian War its hallucinatory character. I'm guessing hallucinatory means imagination or something like that, like illusion.
Yeah, something having to do with a hallucination or illusion of something.
You want to add something? I saw you unmute, Joe.
I just said yes. Sorry, I was getting sick a minute ago, but I'm okay.
I hope you're okay. Sorry you're not doing good. We have seen doctors assigned full-time to the dispensaries of the judicial police, and we know that the philosophers and priests in the relocation or internment centers assume the mission of brainwashing, of probing souls and making the Algerian man unrecognizable. But we shall see that Algerians' European minority is far from being a monolithic bloc that one imagines. I wonder when they say the Algerians' European no, okay. Are these people that were born in Algeria but have European descent? Like, are they settlers? Are they children of settlers just born in Algeria?
It's sort of like the same situation of Palestinians who just happen to have some sort of that one of their family members married with an Israeli, or yes, in the case of Algeria, it could also be they are Algerian but they were born in France, or they were born in Algeria but they have French people within their family.
Okay. It's far from being the monolithic bloc that one imagines. Mr. Lafont, the director of the newspaper El Echo d'Oran, in declaring recently that Algiers does not represent Algeria, in fact manifests the desire that certain Europeans feel to keep their distance from the colonialist general staff of Algiers. One could go further and say that the true Mechelet, the Rue d'Isly, a few cafes of Babel Oed do not represent Algeria. All right, number 4. The rule of Mechelet, the Rue d'Isly, is in the heart of the business centers of Algiers. Babel Oud, popular district frequently by Europeans. Okay, back up to 4. And we're going to go to 5 here soon. In April 1953, at a meeting of the board of directors of the MTLD, the decision was reached to establish contact with the European population and to initiate exchange of views with the main groups representing the interests of the European minority. All right, back down. We're doing 5 now. MTLD, Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Liberties, an Algerian nationalist party formed before the revolution. Okay, so it's before the revolution. Okay. All right, back up. Where I stopped. This is blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for the... Okay, there it is. The UDMA, likewise, in its doctrinal publication, constantly reminded its militants of the strategic and political necessity of not co-signing all the Europeans to the colonialist side. All right, 6. UDMA, Democratic Union of the Algerian Manifesto, another Algerian nationalist party. All right, cool. And number 7 is a traditional Arab Mutanjis. All right. Where was I at? I was on 6. Okay. We may mention, incidentally, that several Europeans were, at the same time, members of the UDMA. Such positions were rapidly to bring rewards. In the cities, more and more meetings were held between Muslim Algerians and European Algerians. These meetings had nothing in common with the Franco-Muslim forces of the colonialist authorities. There was no, here we go, the Mechoui, M-E-C-H-O-U-I. No exoticism?
Exoticism. I can't say it right.
Yeah. No patrilinealism or humility. Men and women discussed their future, called attention to the dangers that beset their country. Groups of young people would meet during this period, and outgoing were organized. Associations of girls joined hands and began to work together. The psychology base for human and really democratic encounters were definitely laid. Europeans who were known or supposed to be Democrats and anti-colonialists were approached by leaders. The Algerian question was studied from all angles, and every often after a complete survey the colonial situation, the Europeans would be the ones to express surprise that Algeria had not yet drawn the conclusion to which the political failures appointed Every often, these Europeans would themselves reach the realization of the necessity for armed action as the only means of rescuing Algeria from its desperate situation. It has often been claimed that the FLN made no distinction among the different members of Algerian European society. Those who make such accusations fail to take into account both the policy long defined by the Front with respect to Algerians Europeans and the constant support that hundreds and hundreds of European men and women have brought to our units and to our political selves. That we have said is that the Algerian people are spontaneously aware of the importance of the European population, which expresses itself through its oppressive system and especially through the silence and inactivity of the French Democrats. In Algeria, in the face of the affirmed and total violence of the colonialists, other things being equal, it can be said of Algerians European Democrats that has been endlessly repeated of the French parties of the left. For a long time, history is made without them. They are unable to prevent the sending of contingents to the Algerian, unable to prevent Guy Mullet's capitulation. They were passive under La Costa, powerless before the military coup of the 13th of May. Nevertheless, their existence has forced the neo-fascists of Algeria and France to be on the defensive. The left has done nothing for a long time in France. Yet, by this action, its denunciation and its analysis, it has prevented a certain number of things. Algerians European Democrats, in the framework of the Algerian War, could not as a whole act like their homologues. What's that word? Let's find out what that word is.
How is it spelled?
HOMOLOGUES.
Okay.
Ryan War could not as a whole act like their homologues.
Homologues. It's homologues. Okay. What is a homologue? It's a good question. No coughing for you, Joe. Stop coughing. A lecture on Algerian Revolution and Marxist theory. Huh, interesting. Interesting. All right, I'm going to read. Okay, you got it? Okay, go ahead.
It says a homologous thing. Homologous thing.
Don't want to lose you.
Hold on, my phone is slow. Homologous. Okay, here we go. Come on. Oh yeah. So homologous just means similar.
Similar? Okay.
Yeah.
So, like they're homologous living in France. Okay, so similar. Okay. Democracy in France traditionally lives in broad daylight. The Algerian democracy is tantamount to treason. A Claude Bordet, a Domo Etch, a Peria Cot can publicly take a position differently from that of the government of their country. Being former members of the resistance, having from the beginning devoted their lives to the defense and to the triumph of certain principles, they experience no hesitation, and the threat when they come do not budge them. But we must emphasize the fact that within the framework of the French hexagon, democratic traditions have by and large been maintained. France is an imperialist country, has great racist potentialities. as we have seen more clearly in the past 2 years. But among Frenchmen, there are reflexes that operate simultaneously. What? Oh, no worries. Freedom's left opponents less and less. However, this accounts for the relative freedom left. Wait, was I right there? That the French as imperialist. Okay. This accounts for the relative freedom left to opponents less and less. However, because France is beginning to be colonized by the Algerian activists, and this also accounts for the outburst of public indignation that greets every revelation. Yeah, revelation. Okay, that reaches France regarding the torturous practice in Algeria. Because of their own contradiction and because of the power and the radicalism of the reactionary parties, the forces of the left in France have up to the present time been unable to impose negotiations. But undeniably, they are constantly forcing the extremists to unmask themselves and hence progressively to adopt the position that will participate in their defeat. In Algeria, the forces of the left do not exist. It is unthinkable for European Democrats really to militate an Algerian outside the Algerian Communist Party. We know that even the Algerian Communist Party has for a long time confined within the reformist position of the French Union type, and that for a long months. After November 1st, 1954, the Algerian Communist Party denounced the terroristes provocateur. In other words, the FLN. The Algerian European Democrats have from the beginning lived in a more or less clandestine state. Drawn in the European mass, they lived in a world of values that their principles reject and condemn. The European Democrats is on the defensive. He has contacts with Algerians, but in secrecy. The European colony, he is referring to it as, quote, the Arab. With all these phenomenons are well known, and they have appeared in Indochina, in Africa, south of the Sahara, in Tunisia, and in Morocco. This democratic European accustomed to semi-clandestine contracts with Algerians unwittingly learns the law of revolutionary action. And when those whom he used to receive in his home tell him to give shelter to a friend, to find medication or a transport, a parcel, where is as a rule no difficulty. We must emphasize the point that never has a member of the front deceived a French Democrat. It would be out of the question to expose a man or a woman who had always commanded our esteem to the slightest risk without warning them. The decision to help FLN was taken quite knowingly, in a wholly responsible way. Never as a French Democrat been deceived. Sometimes, especially in the extremely crucial period of 1957, it would happen that the Democrat would hold back and refuse in despair the service requested, but never was there an attempt to deceive or to exploit the serenity of the goodwill of the Europeans. It should perhaps be added that often the European would ask not to be told the details of the matter in connection with which its collaboration as being sought, but the leadership was uncompromising as to this. The FLN wanted responsible people, not people who at the slightest hitch would break down and claim that they had been deceived. The European man and woman who have been arrested and tortured by the police services and the French parachutists by their attitude under torture have shown the rightness of this position taken by the FLN. Not a single Frenchman has revealed to the colonialist police information vital to the revolution. On the contrary, the arrested Europeans have resisted long enough to enable their other members of the network to disappear. The tortured European has behaved like an authentic militant of the national fight for independence. For 5 years, the FLN has not considered it necessary to insist on the participation of Europeans in the fight for liberation. This policy is dictated by the consideration that these Europeans should not be made conspicuous and that their action should not be differentiated from that of any other Algerian. The FLN did not want to make them show Europeans in the ranks of the revolution, on the model of colonial Algeria, where the show, Muslim and Jewish, were ritually to be found in every committee. For the FLN in the new society that is being built. Oh, I gotta do a thing. Hold on. Fucked it up. There we go. For the FLN in the new society that is being built, there are only Algerians. From the outset, therefore, every individual living in Algeria is an Algerian. In tomorrow's independent Algeria, it will be up to every Algerian to assume Algerian citizenship or to reject it in favor of another. There are, to be sure, the war criminals, all those torturers spawned by the civil strifes of Sagon, Tunis, and Makinis, and who today in Algiers are the masquerade?
It's mascara.
Mascara, thank you. Before the end of the colonial reign, whose approach they sense are bent on shedding the greatest possible amount of blood. Those men belonging nowhere. Not that the French colonial empire is being shaken by its last spasm. The French would do well to identify them. If they return to France, these men should be kept under surveillance. Jackals do not take to feeding on milk overnight. The taste of blood of a crime is deeply embedded in the very being of these creatures who, it should be said, must be retrieved by psychiatry. There are also a few hundred European colonialists, powerful, tractable, those who have at all times instigated repression, broken the French Democrats, blocked every endeavor within the colonial framework to introduce a monicum of democracy in Algeria. The Algerian people need not reinstate their position with respect of these men who have considered Algeria and the Algerians as a private reserve. The people have excluded them from the Algerian nation, and they must not hope to be taken back. We shall now show in detail what the European minority has, in the past few years, become diversified, and that considerable number of non-Arab Algerians have identified themselves with the Algerian cause and collaborated actively in the struggle, while others officially fight in the ranks of the Algerian Revolution. All right, anybody? We're good?
So the next thing, it's not Algeria, it's Jewish. It's Algeria's Jewish people.
I will say Jewish. I won't say I will say Jewish.
Right, Jewish people.
I will say that. Algerians, Jewish people. The Algerian Jewish people represent 1/5 of the non-Muslim population of Algeria. Their attitude towards the struggle of the Algerian people is obviously not a homogeneous one. A socioeconomic analysis affords a complete explanation of the different attitudes adopted by the members of the Jewish community. A first group of Jewish people has bound its fate very closely with the colonial domination. Jewish tradesmen, for example, protected against competition from the Algerians by their status as Frenchmen, would not look too favorable upon the setting up of Algerian national authority and the disappearance of provincial systems. It is a fact that the banks made it enormously difficult for Algerian tradesmen to borrow money and very often block their transactions and thus actively collaborate in their bankruptcy, or in any case limit the expansion of their businesses and consequently prevent it from becoming a danger to other tradesmen. In every large city in Algeria, however, one or two Algerians can be found who, by dint of tenacity, a business acumen, is that right? Yeah. Have managed to circumvent, the maneuvers and to constitute a threat to the preeminence of the Jewish tradesmen. Quote, if ever they get their independence, end quote, the tradesmen admit, quote, they will take our place, quote unquote. On the level of economic competition, therefore, there is a fear on the part of the Jewish tradesmen that quality in the competition that would be set up by the Algerian power would be prejudicial to him. This fear is far from being exclusive characteristics of Jewish tradesmen. It is found to be in European tradesmen of all origins in every business, large and small. The end of the colonial regime is looking upon as the end of prosperity. Ooh. It must be pointed out, however, that such a state of mind is not to be found at all levels and in all regions. In the centers where the Jewish tradesman maintains close contact with the Algerian population, and where economic independence is pretty clear, there is a confusion of interest. In these centers, Jewish tradesmen furnish the ALN. It supplies of military clothes, blankets. All right, let's go down to 8. ALN is the Army of National Liberation. Okay, cool. It is no secret that since 1954, several Jewish tradesmen have been arrested for aiding and abetting the Algerian Revolution. Jewish civil servants, practically the only administrative personnel recruited locally, Algerians are settlers or else exercise liberal professions, also look upon the prospects of the birth of the Algerian state with fear and trembling. It is easy for them to guess what the freedom of every Algerian to receive schooling and possibly a scholarship, the disappearance of, ostracism, and of the numerous clauses would introduce radical modifications in their privileges. One remembers the discontent expressed by European civil servants in Algeria when, in a show of conscience, the French authorities waved the specter of quote, the accession of Muslims to public service. This state of mind, although frequent in Algeria, does not exclude absolutely opposite positions. We know Jewish police officers who, especially in 1955 to 56, slowed down the arrests of patriots, even though it had been ordered on the high level, thus often enabled them to disappear. Finally, colonial Algeria being an extremely racist country, the different mechanisms of racist psychology are to be found there. Thus, the Jewish person despised and excluded by the European is quite happy on certain occasions to identify himself with those who humiliate him, to humiliate the Algerian in turn. But it is very rare, except in the region of Constantine, where many poor Jewish people find shelter in the shadows of the colonial reign. To see Jewish people in broad daylight affirms their membership in Algeria's extremist groups. So each different place has its own set of condition and its own social relations to everything. So some of them were taken up, some of them, Alongside the two large categories of Jewish tradespeople and civil servants, there is a great majority, a floating, highly, am I allowed to say that word? Urbanized?
I don't think so.
Having only a poor knowledge of French, considering itself by tradition and sometimes by dressing as authentic natives. This mass represents 3/4 of the Algerian Jewish population. There are in the Algerian territory the the homologues of the Tunisian Jewish person of the Moroccan Dajabri, or the Alaha. Thank you. For these Jewish people, there is no problem. They are Algerians. Okay, the cat wants back in. Sorry. We see, therefore, that the fraction of the Jewish minority actively engaged in the ranks of colonialism is relatively unimportant. Let us now look at the case of the Algerian Jewish person participating in the fight for national liberation. At the time when the French authorities decided to create urban and rural militias, the Jewish citizen wished to know what attitude to adopt in the face of this mobilization. A few of them did not hesitate to propose to the FLN that instead of responding to the requisition?
Yeah.
Thank you. Order, they joined the nearest maquis. The front as a whole advised caution, merely asked these Jewish people within the framework of their profession to become, quote, the eyes and ears of the revolution inside the enemy apparatus. Nice. Their presence in the militia, moreover, has rendered service to the struggle. Thus, the member of the patrol advised the chief of the size of the units, the nature of their arms, the route to be followed, the times when the rounds are made. Likewise, the chief are often kept informed of reprisal operations organized against this or the dower. Thus too, a European of Algeria who has actively participated with his unit in the masquerade of the Algerians may a few days later be a victim of an attempt on his life organized by the Fandandis, which is Jewish quarters of that's number 10? That's number 10. Fandandis, plural of Fandia, a death volunteer in Islamic tradition. Okay. Number 9 was Jewish quarters in the Moroccan town. For the European population, arrogant of the events that have determined the decision of the local cell of the FLN, the attempts may appear unjust and inexcusable, but for the other members of the militia who remembers the cries of the men murdered in the dower and of the women being raped, the reason for this act is clear. The rightness of popular justice manifests itself in a particularly convincing way. The observer familiar with events in detail may notice in the course of the days following the attempt that several civilian servants among the militant men have asked for their transfer, or else they literally fled to Algiers. At other times, the Jewish participant financially in the struggle and making the monthly contribution through the intermediaries. It is well for the French to know these things. As for the French authorities, they are well aware of them. It is well for the Jewish person to know them too. For it is not true that the Jewish person is in favor of colonialism and that the Algerian people reject him and relegate him to the camp of the oppressor. The Algerian people, in truth, did not wait until 1959 to define their position with regards to the Jewish person. Here, in fact, is a passage from the appeal addressed in the form of a tract to the Jewish person of Algeria. At this most difficult moment, the revolution, and that is, in the fall of 1956, the Algerian people considered that it is their duty today to address themselves directly to the Jewish community in order to ask it solemnly to affirm its intention to belong to the Algerian nation. This clearly affirms choice, will dissipate all misunderstandings, and will root out the germs of the hatred maintained by the French colonialism. Already in the issue of the Plattformie, published in August 1956, the FLN had declared on the subject of the Jewish minority, Algerians of Jewish origin have not yet overcome their qualms of conscience nor chosen sides. Let us hope they will in great numbers take the path of those who have responded to the call of the generous fatherland and have given their friendship to the revolution by already proudly proclaiming their Algerian nationality. Jewish intellectuals have spontaneously demonstrated their support for the Algerian cause, rather in the democratic and traditional anti-colonialist parties or in liberal groups. Even today, the Jewish lawyer and doctor who in the camps or in prison share the fate of millions of Algerians attest to the multiracial reality of the Algerian nation. Various groups of Jewish populations of the Algerian have likewise taken an official stand. In August 1956, a group of Jewish people in Constantine wrote, one of the most pernicious maneuvers of colonialism in Algeria was and remains the division between Jewish people and Muslim people. The Jewish people have been in Algeria for more than 2,000 years. They are thus the integral part of the Algerian people. Muslims and Jewish people, children of the same earth, must not fall into the trap of provocation. Rather, they must make a common front against it, not letting themselves to be duped by those who, not so long ago, were offhandedly capitulating to the total extermination of the Jewish people as a salutary step of the evolution of humanity. In January 1957, in response to the Front's appeal, a group of Algerian Jewish people wrote, "It is time today that we should return to Algerian community. Attachment to the artificial French nationality is a snare and a delusion. At the moment when the young people in powerful modern Algerian nation is rapidly taking shape, Jewish people have joined the ranks of the Algerians fighting for the national independence. Some have paid with their lives. Others have bravely borne the foulest police brutalities. And many are today behind the doors of prisons and the gates of concentration camps. We also know that in the common fight, Muslim people and Jewish people have discovered themselves to be racial brothers, and that they feel a deep and lasting attachment to the Algerian fatherland. In proclaiming our attachment to the Algerian nation, we put an end to the pretext used by the colonialists when they tried to prolong their domination by making the French people believe that the revolt here is only the result of the medieval fantasticism. All right. Any questions on the Algerian Jewish persons?
Zionist propaganda debunked once again.
Yes. Now we're going to go into the Algerian settler. I think this is pertinent to people being born in Algeria with French descent, kind of like I'm Irish and German, right? But I'm still a settler. But I was born in Turtle Island, but it's still I'm a settler. So yeah, I think if I remember, I think. Okay, Algerian settlers. Another myth to be destroyed is that the Algerian settler were unanimously opposed to the end of colonial domination. Here again, French colonialism must know that the most important backing given by Algerian Europeans to the people's struggle has been and remains that of the settlers. Even the Algerians have been surprised by the frequency with which the settlers have responded to the appeals of the FLN. In any case, once contacted by the FLN, no settler has ever reported to the French authorities. It has happened that they have refused to appeal, but the secret has always been kept. In the countryside, from the first months of the 1955, the small settlers, the farmers, The managers were approached by turns. Of course, the known extreme rightists were systematically avoided. Generally speaking, especially in the small and medium population centers, men know one another. And the Algerian, for his part, has from the beginning put a label on every European. And when an FLN cell would decide to contact the Europeans in the region, the members knew at once who were the ones who should automatically be excluded. They also knew, though, with less certainty, which one would probably contribute to their help of the revolution. So they're still kind of timid on that, which is understandable. Very often, especially in the small rural centers, only one member of the cell is made responsible for the relations with the Europeans. One could readily imagine the vigilance that must be exercised in the first months of the struggle to prevent ill-advised moves on the part of the militants, not yet sufficiently disciplined. We have seen, in fact, that the European minority was seen as a indifferentiated whole within the framework of the colonial situation. On November 1st, 1954, there was, therefore, an extreme oversimplification. The outlines of paradoxes of the world stood out in sudden sharpness. The settler who helps the revolution might be led to echo the colonialist remarks in public, at the cafe, or in a conversation in order to assure that other Europeans of his solidarity. With them, the only thing that counts is force. They're all in cahoots, end quote, quote unquote. The people who have their ears to the ground find out these remarks have been made. A new body of evidence builds up in the village. The settler is unanimously designated as a target for the Fandanies, Fadaines. It then becomes necessary to intervene tactfully to prohibit any act of hostility to the person or against the property of that settler, and at the same time not give any hints as to the reason of these instructions. Sometimes it may be decided to burn a few haystacks in the field of the settler who, in a region that has otherwise been razed to the ground by the FLN, has paradoxically suffered no damage. The colonialist Europeans sooner or later began to wonder what is behind the front's unusual respect for the settlers' fields. We may mention also that in certain localities we have evidence of fires being set or livestock being slaughtered by European neighbors jealous of the protection of settlers seems to enjoy, in contrast to the almost daily raids carried out by units of the ALN on their properties. Since 1955, many farms belonging to European settlers have been used by turns in infirmaries, refuge, or relay stations. When the French troops, in the course of their foray, began to make a habit of systematically destroying the grain reserves of Algerian population, the ALN decided to stock their supplies on the farms of Europeans. Thus, several farms belonging to Europeans were transformed into ALN granaries, and at nightfall, sections of the ALN unit could be seen coming down from the mountains to take delivery of stacks of wheat or Semolina. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. At other times, weapons should be stored on the farms. This was a period during which, in many areas, meetings would be held on European farms. Deliveries of arms were made under the scared protection of the European settler. It sometimes happened, too, that the settler would accept the weapons that were delivered them by the French army on the pretext of self-protection and hand over to the ALN those that they had, this is awesome, that had previously. Finally, Since the beginning of the revolution, a great number of European farmers have regularly been helping the Algerian revolution financially. Sick. The dozens of European settlers arrested for arms traffic, arms transport, financial support of the rebellion, quote unquote, suffice to show the scope of this European participation in the national fight for liberation. The French authorities, since they have discovered this commitment of the Europeans to the cause of the front, have formed a habit of keeping it hidden, or of branding these Europeans as communists. Of course they would. Debunking the myth of Algerian settler support from the FLN. This propaganda trick has two objectives. Remember, the propaganda thing is this, okay? Propaganda is this. Okay. This propaganda tricks has two objectives. First, to revive the arguments that North Africa is a target of communist infiltration into the NATO strategic system, into the hearts of Western civilization. Damn those communists. Next to discredit those men, to present them as foreign agents, even mercenaries. French colonialism refused to admit that the genuine European can really fight side by side with Algerian people. European farmers, without engaging in combat, helped the front by refusing, for example, the protection that French army officers to provide them. These refusals are sometimes of consequence, for in farms happening to be in crucial strategic areas, a passage between two mountains, frontier regions. The absence of colonial forces favors the movement of units of the ALN, or the supplying of the mujahideen. Now we're going to number 11. Number 11, mujahideen, plural for mujahideen. So mujahideen is plural for mujahideen, fighters, original fighters in Muslim holy war. Okay. It sometimes happens that the French army decides in the course of a control operation in giving sectors to establish a post on a farm despite the settlers' opposition. The owner then never fails to notify the front that these quarters are being set up without his consent and that he has not asked anyone for protection. The settler does his best, in fact, to make things uncomfortable for the French military, and in any case, to communicate to the local chiefs of the FLN detailed information as to the size and the morale of the unit posted on the farm. Okay, hold on a second. We might stop here. Let me see how big the European cities. So everybody remember page 166. Just real quick. And see how appendix 1. We can go to there, right? We'll go to appendix 1. All right, I think we can do that. Okay, here we go. Europeans in the cities. Any urban center. Wait. Before we go, does anybody have any questions? Anything they would like to add to that section?
No, I think I got that one pretty good. It's a really good section, though.
Yeah. Finn?
I'm all set.
Straight. Europeans in the cities. In the urban centers, the Europeans were to work essentially in the political cells, with the measures taken by the French ministers, Stella and Lacoste. We found that pharmaceutical products and surgical instruments were hit by an embargo. We have already pointed out the directives addressed to doctors made in the obligation for them to notify the police authorities of any wounded man who appeared suspect. European doctors and pharmacists then began to treat wounded ALN members without discrimination and to deliver the antibiotics and ether asked by the FLN. Militants. Hundreds of millions of units of penicillin daily made their way to the marquees. Yay! Other doctors went further. See, these are the things that we can take an examination of our situation and what we are going to have to do to engage in revolutionary practice to feel and to be able to supply these things to our people, to the revolutionary causes. So this is a very good thing of how they engage in non-liberated areas. If you read Mao's on his civil war, you could tell that there's red areas, liberated areas, and semi-liberated areas, and non-liberated areas. They call those the red zone. So in a sense, they're doing the same thing where they have zones of how to engage in each of these zones based on the material conditions. This is good. Other doctors went further and unhesitantly answered calls to go on the nearby mountains to treat the wounded. Sometimes when the wounded was very serious, the mujahideen would be taken in the doctor's car to a friendly clinic and treated for 2 weeks or two. The French police learned of these things, damn it, for after a certain period, some of these clinics were regularly searched. European nurses, for their part, found ways to spiriting surgical instruments, sulfuge drugs, sulfa drugs? How do you say it? Sulfa drugs?
Probably sulfa.
SULFA, sulfa drugs.
Yeah, sulfa.
Dressing, dressing for the hospital. Who's in here? Okay, it's up to you guys. It would also sometimes happen that after a wounded prisoner had been operated by a French doctor, while still under the effect of anesthesia, he would disclose certain secrets. The nurse, after the wounded man was entirely awake, would advise him to be cautious and tell him what he had revealed.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. On the other hand, it could also happen that an intern present in the room would immediately telephone to the police, who would then, 2 hours after the clinical operation, subject the patient to real torture sessions. So fuck that. Fuck those fuckers that betrayed the revolution. European doctors likewise organized clandestine training courses of future medical corpsmen of the FLN. Several successive classes and medical corpsmen thus were turned out by these schools and joined those trained in corresponding centers directed by Algerian doctors. European girls would put themselves at the disposal of political cells, obtain paper and mimeograph machines, and would often handle the printing of FLN tracts. Youngsters would make themselves responsible for driving the members of a network in their cars. European families would take important political leaders under their wing and in a number of cases enable them to escape General Massoud, dragnets. European political figures, highly placed civil servants, furnished false passports, false identity cards, and false employment cards to the FLN cells. It was thanks to the involvement of these increasingly large numbers of Algerian Europeans that the revolutionary organization was able in certain towns to escape the police and the parachutists. These are like just troops and stuff, shock troops. Yeah, they know that many Europeans have been arrested and tortured, or having sheltered and saved political or military leaders of the revolution from the colonialist hounds. The Europeans have not contented themselves with carrying medications and men in their cars. They also carry arms, automatic pistols, cases of grenades, have thus been able to pass through all roadblocks, as Europeans are never searched carefully. It has even happened that when the European's car has been searched, the driver, to avoid being molested, has explained their arms by saying he wanted to be ready to smash the Arabic people. Such an attitude delights the highway police, and this anti-native solidarity is frequently toasted in the nearest bistro. Finally, and this is quite unexpected, though it has happened several times, members of the police will report to the local cells on planned operations, will warn a given Algerian that he is being watched, or that last minute advise him that a tortured prisoner has been made to talk and his name, and has named him as a local chief. Apart from the Europeans arrested and often frightfully tortured by the European troops for, quote, complicity with the enemy, there are, of course, the Algerian a great number of Frenchmen engaged in the fight for liberation. Others have paid for their devotion to the Algerian national cause with their lives. It was thus, to give an example of the Matri Savini, an attorney of Oran, who had fought for a long time in the ranks of the FLN, died as a result of an assault organized by Morocco by the French Second Bureau. All right, so we got 10 minutes. Let me see how long this appendix is. It's pretty long. Yes, it's pretty long. Pretty long. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of it. All right. The appendix. We're going to stop here and we're going to talk about what we read. Let me get to the point real quick so I can be fully listening. I got finding the appendix. It went down too far. There it is. No, that's not it. What page is it on? There. No, that's Algerian settler. What page?
166.
160 what?
169.
169. Got it. Thank you. All right, we'll stop here at 169. Appendix 1. Put in your bookmarks, of course.
Cool learning.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
It was cool learning about the Europeans that stood on the side of the Algerians. And it was cool learning about the Jewish people that stood on the side of the Algerians. Because, like, as far as I knew, they were all just colonists and colonialists and were colonizers. And so it was nice to find out that some of the people still had empathy. I found that cool. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, but here's the thing. The other thing is that a lot of those Algerian Jewish people are indigenous to Algeria. So, I mean,
thousands of years.
yeah. But I was also going to mention that strategy that a lot of the European families would carry, where they're the ones driving. So, you know, the likelihood of them getting searched is not going to be very high. So that's why I thought it was a good strategy.
Or it's going to be a kind of a brisk search, you know, like, hey, you're good. You know what I mean? Like, let's look around. You're good. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But, yeah.
It's stuff that we can use today, because ICE does the same thing. With us being white, we can get by with, like, being more likely to hide someone in our house, or being more likely to get the food to them and stuff like that, because they look at us and they think, oh, they're white, they're not helping.
Exactly. What do you think will happen in our situation? Do you think a similar situation could be the same, not the same exact situation, but similar, like a universality of that situation here? Yeah. So, like, I wonder if that same engagement's going to happen when it comes to the revolution of colonized people here, because there's still people are still colonized here. They still have, in my view, they still have national liberation to happen. You know what I mean? In my view. So, yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, the thing is that I have, for a very long time, I have been not thinking about, but trying to get my mindset into, I am going to, of planning to do that, just because, again, I carry the physical appearance of a white European. So, for a very long time, I've been thinking and also getting my mindset into, getting into that mindset of, there's probably going to be a lot of errands or or interactions that I'm going to have to have for people who are BIPOC, and I mean by physically appearing like it. So, but we'll also know, also for indigenous people who supposedly are. Not supposedly, but who are lighter skinned, I'm also going to have to do it for them, because at the moment the authorities find out about their identity, it's done. Like, there's no turning back after that.
This is where we use the construct of whiteness in our favor to progress a revolutionary cause, because that's what the settlers did. They utilized their settler status to help the FLN and the ALN, especially with like medical supplies and all of those things, and relaying communiques. They portrayed the construct of the colonial structure in favor of dismantling the colonial structure.
Well, it's interesting because and obviously I'm going to bring Palestine again because I just happen, I happen to know a lot about it. But that app that I showed you guys in the past, it's called I Return. It was made and developed by an organization of white Israelis, okay? European descent Israelis, who are the leaders of an organization called Zochrot, and that's the specific purpose and objective of that organization is to eliminate the Nakba denial amongst the settlers, right? So in a way, I'm viewing it in this way. In a way, they're also building a mass line with this organization.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's why we can't be. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm good. What was it?
That's why we can't be dogmatic and set in one way. We have to be ever flowing and flexible, because things are flowing and extra. Like things in movement develop and move. We have to be ever observing of the development of movement of something and how it interacts and engages with another thing. You know what I mean?
Yes. And specifically on the part of interaction, because here's the thing. This app that was developed by this organization of European Israelis, one of the main functions is to go to where you can like select like a random location, which will give you a GPS address to that location, which happens to be a displaced village that was displaced during, the timeline of 1947 to 1949. Mm-hmm. And so to that, you're also encouraging people, again, on practice, like Mao said, to practice the first phase or the first step of national liberation, which is educating yourself. You educate yourself, eventually you're going to organize and then rise up. So, I don't know, I just view this organization, even though they've never specified whether they're communist or not, I just see this as a way of building a mass line by using their own settler privilege within the Zionist society, which is what Fanon just described right now.
Yeah. But you gotta admit, though, like, there is still, like they said, the FLN was still highly vigilant and highly just making, you know what I mean? Highly vigilant, remember? So,
yep.
Because, like, it's like, for instance, white people portray revolution. They pacify revolutionary intents. They utilize their liberalism in order to maintain their status quo. So there's still that function, There's still that function and that reluctance that, like for instance, they said that the settlers never did this. The settlers never did that. And when we found the settler that did this, we would do this. You know what I mean? So like, they still have to function in a very vigilant way to make sure that no harm comes to them when they engage with settlers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what Tiger and Two Spirit were talking about yesterday at Chicky's panel. And the good thing is that at least in Palestine, all of these organizations like Breaking the Silence, B'Tselem, and Zochrot are 100% approved by the Palestinian community. So these Israelis actually go to the West Bank and consult with those Palestinians. Those Palestinians are okay, but also Palestinians are given like a collective executive position within those organizations. So pretty much a lot of these what's that?
To work parallel with them, so they know that because like with blind spots, white people have blind spots due to racism, right? So we have to work parallel so that way when we have our blinders come up, we can criticize that and advance our deconstruction part. Yeah, sorry.
For sure.
No,
you're good. Actually, I think for B'Tselem, a lot of those Israelis who record the shit that the settlers do in the West Bank, yeah, a lot of them actually have the phone numbers, emails, and are in contact with different Palestinian residents, and they just call them over and they're like, "Look, you need to get your ass over here, get it on camera." So yeah, it's a good way to get parallel, like you said.
Yeah, parallel. It's yeah, because like Mao's talked about it, and other people, like even Lenin's talked about, we have to figure out who is going to support the revolutionary cause, who are the revolutionary parties, and who are the allies to the revolutionary parties. Those are going to be important to understand who is for us and who are our enemies. Needs to be drawn out. And there's going to be time where like the revolution will make a mistake and something will happen that damages it. But strategic retreat is a good option to consolidate and to reform and to figure out better strategies and tactics. That's why Mao talks about a people's protracted war. You know, it's fast and then it slows down. There's advancement and then there's retreat. It's going over a period of time. You know what I mean? Going and hashing out, becoming more experienced within the revolutionary process. You know what I mean?
Okay, I see. Yeah, that sounds like a good strategy because, I mean, the more inconsistency you make, you know, the chain of events unravel. From what I'm hearing, from what you explained to me, then, yeah, I mean the easier it makes to kind of like discombobulate the colonial system of suppression.
Yeah.
From what I understand from that Maoist concept of a protracted people's war.
Yeah, one of the biggest accomplishments was Mao's dialectical outlook on when it became civil war, guerrilla warfare, a protracted war. Like he's still studied to this day because he was highly successful with minimum like technology and armaments. You know what I mean? So yeah, and going against Japanese imperialism, like the FLN, like they're going against not only like settlers but other people that are like French, that are like allies to the French. You know what I mean? So like they have like yeah. So
it's like they got different enemies coming from multiple corners.
Exactly that. And yeah. Anyways, does anybody else have anything else before I close it?
No. If Chicky opens up the live, then I guess I'll see you there.
So they're not going live tonight. Two Spirits Medicine's knocking them out. So I think Communist is going to be going back live after they get done doing a couple things.
Yeah. I'll probably go live to bring space so people can come and hang out, talk, whatever. Maybe we can have some ideological conversations. Who knows? Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Once I see it, I'll be supporting, and yeah, as soon as I get here.
I'll send you an invite. So
Sounds good.
all right. So I'm going to close it out, everybody. Thank you so much. I don't know how much more we have in this book. I think we're coming to an end. The next book will be The Black Jacobin, about the Haitian Revolution. So it's by C.L.R. James, and I think he's a Marxist.
The Black Jacobins.
The Black Jacobins. So all right. We'll talk to y'all later. Love y'all.